Hi there, everyone. I'm Sam Valenti, and today I have the great pleasure of being joined by one of my favorite sports and entertainment personalities. She's been a reporter for teams like the Mets, Nationals, and Padres. She's also a great voice actor as well. Julie Alexandria. Julie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Sam. It's good to see you.
Yes, it's great to see you too. And I was kind of mentioning this just a little bit before we started recording here, but last month you celebrated your birthday, and what I thought was awesome is that you went to see Mamma Mia, which I thought was amazing. And that makes me so happy as a big ABBA fan. So, I got to give you major props for that.
It was the first time I saw it. It had run on Broadway for years while I was living in New York City, but I never had the chance to see it. And it came to San Diego, and I thought, I got to see this. It's been forever. So it was so entertaining. Have you seen it?
Yes. Oh yeah.
It was great. It was such a good time. I felt like I was at a concert, and just the theatricality of it all, it was so sparkly. It was great.
Yeah. I know it's such a fun show, and it's just one of those things where like I've seen like the movies countless times. I've been to see the show. Whenever I just watch it, it just leaves me with a good positive feeling.
The music has a way of doing that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm curious, kind of now. Would you consider yourself an ABBA fan now?
I have to be honest, don't hold it against me. I was not really familiar with their work before seeing the show, other than Dancing Queen, like the major hit song that's like at every
Right.
wedding and every bar mitzvah. But it was really fun. There were a lot of songs I did not know were by the band. And so it was like there I was surrounded by ABBA fans. And so I think their fandom was rather infectious. So I sort of became a fan by proxy because I was around them.
Right. Yeah. It's a great experience, and I'm really glad that you got to go see it and have a great time. It's a pretty fun way to celebrate a birthday. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and another kind of cool thing about that is that obviously so it's a big musical. It's like it's kind of like it's sort of like a big theater production. I think it's cool because growing up you love theater and stuff. So like whenever you go to those kind of shows, do you ever get that sort of and itch kind of inside, and you're like, oh man, well maybe I should go do some acting again.
you know, it's always been in my bones. I was brought up in the theater. My mom was a stage manager growing up. So as a kid, I was, in the theater all the time. And then eventually, as I got older, I went up on stage and I started performing. And that was sort of like the first chapter of my professional life was on stage doing professional theater from New York, Broadway, off Broadway, touring, regional theater, community theater. You got to start somewhere. But I absolutely love theater. It's a huge part of my life, always has been, and still is. I think it's something that never leaves you. If you are a theater kid, you grow up to either still do it on some level in some capacity, or you grow up to appreciate it and you just have to see it. So I think for me, I do think there is some theater in my future. Maybe not now. I'm the mom of a 5 year old, which takes up a lot of my energy and attention. And every night when I read to him, it's like a Broadway style production, pretty much. So maybe when he gets a little older and I have a little more free time in the evenings to rehearse a show, which is usually about 6 weeks before a 4 to 6 week run. So yeah, I would love to. I would love to. It's something that I think has informed everything I've ever done professionally. There's nothing like having that foundation in the theater. And I think you can tell as you watch TV and film and, even watch sports, who has a theater background, even all the way to my voice acting career. It really makes a difference because it informs your presence, how you hold your body, how you are in the space, and how you react to others.
Yeah, I can 100%, agree to that. And I can relate to that as well because I used to be kind of a theater kid back in the day. And
Hey.
definitely I can say that, and of course, I want to go into, sports broadcasting now. I don't think, my broadcasting stuff would be would be as good if I didn't have that theater experience. Because I think that having that theater experience, helps out with your, speaking and stuff. It can help out with your on-camera presence, talking to other people. It's very, very helpful.
Absolutely. It's the number one thing I say to people when they say, what's some advice that you can give me? I'm just starting out in the industry. Take a theater class, take a public speaking class, but take an improv class. Because with theater, the magical thing about theater that sets it apart from film and TV or really any other acting on any level is that you only have one chance. So it's the closest you're going to get to live TV. And it was the perfect runway for me to sort of really get immersed in what it's like to have one chance to get it right, because that is as close to live TV as you're ever going to get. So when you're on stage, anything can happen, just like in sports. Anything can happen. You really don't know, but you have to be prepared and you have to be able to think on your feet. And so that's why I think it is an invaluable foundation to truly anything you want to do, but especially with sports broadcasting.
Yep. I 100% agree. Now I kind of want to get a little bit, kind of into your background and stuff. And what's cool is that you majored in theater, at Cal State Long Beach. So I got to ask, especially as a college student right now, what was your experience like back then? And just overall, what were some of your favorite memories from being in college?
Oh my gosh. Well, skipping ahead a little bit, because you mentioned Cal State Long Beach, I will say that it became handy because they have such an incredible baseball program. And some of the guys that I covered went to school at the same time as I did. So if you were a dirtbag, and then I grew up, and that's what they call the 49ers, dirtbags. It's not an insult, but if were a dirtbag, or if you went to Fullerton, which is our big rival, like Justin Turner and Kurt Suzuki, those guys, covering them later on, Danny Espinoza, like it gave me just a really great jumping off point because I felt like we had this sort of commonality. So going to a huge baseball school in general in Southern California was invaluable. As far as my theater training, I had gone to Orange County High School of the Arts. It was something I made the decision, I would say in high school, that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to perform for the rest of my life. And I didn't know in what capacity exactly, but stage and theater seemed like, the low-hanging fruit. There was a lot of community theater that I grew up doing as early as elementary and middle school. And then I started working professionally in college and outside of college. I think my favorite show at CSULB was 12th Night, and I played Viola. I ended up doing that off Broadway in New York at Urban Stages. I played Olivia, the other female lead, but that was probably my favorite theatrical experience. But it was wonderful. I really got to cut my teeth. I had a wonderful professor, Joanne Gordon, who really shaped a lot of and informed the type of actor I became. So a lot of gratitude there.
Yes, absolutely. And then, after college, you moved to, the Big Apple. You moved to New York to pursue a Broadway career. So I have to ask, when you arrive in New York City, what are your first impressions like, and just kind of what was that transition like, going to the big city?
So it really wasn't a huge transition because I'm from there. So I was born in New York. My parents are from the Bronx. I'm originally from Queens. So also, flash forward, that came in handy when my first job in sports, well, really second job in sports, was the New York Mets, because I grew up with the names Jesse Orozco, Keith Hernandez, Ron Darling, because my parents were the type of baseball fans that would watch the 86 Mets World Series on VHS, because we didn't have on demand. We didn't have, DVR back then. So like, I grew up already very familiar with the iconic players, even the 69 Mets. I knew those names. I knew who they were. So to me, we would go back to New York, every summer to visit our family. My mom's Puerto Rican. My dad has an Eastern European background. So I have a very diverse background with a huge family with like 32 first cousins. So we would always make it back there. for Christmas and for the summers. And so to me, New York was just this incredible, beautiful place that also felt like a second home. So going there at 20 years old I didn't see it as like the big scary city, the big bad city, as I think maybe a lot of people or transplants might see it when they first get off the plane. To me, it was like, well, yeah, my cousin lives on 79th Street and I got some other cousins on Canal Street. So this is where we are. I actually moved into a family member's apartment when I got there. So I was surrounded by family and friends of my parents who had been there. So it was very familiar.
That once you got there, you already had that familiarity and stuff, and in a way, it's just kind of like, oh, I know this place. I know my way around here.
Yeah, I mean that definitely. Not to say I didn't like get off the subway at a certain, a couple times and like completely turned around. This is before we had like, maps on our phones. This was like I think I had like a Nokia phone at the time, and I definitely had my fair share of getting lost and also just kind of falling on your face and making those mistakes that you make in your early 20s, whether it be career wise or just trying to survive, because that is the thing about New York that I don't know that I anticipated, which is it's a tough city and it's a tough city to make a living because it's expensive. It was expensive back then. It's still expensive. And it really, somebody once said, New York City will prey upon your insecurities. And it's true. You will run into yourself on the streets of New York faster than anywhere else. And it truly weeds out the ones who can hack it and the ones who can't. I had a lot of friends that came out around the same time that I did, theater friends trying to make it on Broadway. And maybe they would last a year or two and say, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm over this. I want to go back to California. I want to go to the beach. I want to be warm. I don't want to freeze. And I get that. And there's no shame in that. It's not for everyone. I felt alive in the city. I absolutely loved it. It played to my strengths. And I just had a grand time. I mean, I still hold the city quite close to my heart, and I love going back there because I was there for 15 years. So it's really my second home still to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. I can kind of relate to you there because I was born in Dallas and stuff, but all my family's from Chicago. So I felt like every year was always going to Chicago, to see family and stuff. And I'll say this, if there's any like dream place for me to be, it's Chicago, which is another huge city.
Yeah.
Just walking around, seeing all those big buildings. I just, no, I can relate to that. I love it all.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like a big city. There's a certain energy. It's just, they say it's the bedrock in New York because it's, an entire island of Manhattan that's built on bedrock. And so they say that's what's, causes the good energy.
Mm. Now, so when you're in New York now, and like I said, you're trying to pursue Broadway career. So like what sort of kind of productions? I know you mentioned a couple of them earlier, but what sort of productions, were you acting in at this time?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I'll go ahead and I'll just say it. I'm not embarrassed to say it, but at the time, again, it's about having that day job as well as being able to attend those auditions. And when I went there, I didn't have any connections. There was no nepotism that went down as far as getting roles, so I really had to hustle. I had but I also didn't want to wait tables. I was very, which there's no shame in that, but I was like, as much as I can, I either want to work in sales or some sort of like, presentational capacity so that I could feel like I was still acting. So I worked in a lot of restaurants as a host. I ended up working at Madame Tussauds as a day job and a performer. They had like a haunted house that was truly terrifying. And I was like a character actor in that. There was also a restaurant called Jekyll and Hyde, which had costumed characters roaming around like Disneyland or any theme park and like face characters. And so I did that for a few years. And then I started touring. I did the tour of Tony and Tina's wedding. I did some Shakespeare off Broadway. And then my debut was in a show called Pieces. And that was at New World Stages. Back then it was called Dodger Stages, on 49th between 8th and 9th. And my apartment, funny enough, actually backed up to the stage door. So I got a text from the producer, like from opening night, and he said, happy opening night. Welcome to the cast. I hope you have a wonderful run. And he said, call time is 6 p.m. So you might want to roll out of bed at 5:57 because my apartment literally was straight across the street. But I did a ton of regional theater. I performed at Lincoln Center. I did a show called Yo Soy Latina. It was a world premiere at Lincoln Center. I performed at the Crossroads Theater. I did the Diary of Anne Frank at Tennessee Rep. I did some musicals, but mostly straight plays. And it was just a wonderful time. It was so much fun. And then I got an agent out of doing a show. I was actually playing a British character. And I got approached by an agent after the show. And they said, oh, we're building our British contingent for our voiceover department. Do you have any interest in doing voiceovers? And I'm like, well, that's great, but I'm actually American. I don't have a British accent. And they said, yeah, but you could do a really good one. So I ended up joining the agency, and I booked a ton of British and American voiceovers. And that led to hosting and doing commercials. So I did a ton of commercial work and a ton of entertainment hosting. And that was sort of how I got my start in the TV scene in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I noticed, is that you hosted like some of these online shows, like these web series. And
Yes.
one of these shows I thought was so interesting. It's the show called Wall Strip. It's talk about stocks and stuff. So I have to
Yeah.
ask, how do you, when you're hosting the show, how do you make the stock market entertaining?
Well, okay. So that was the beauty of this show. And the interesting thing about it was this was the first online web series to be purchased by a major national network. CBS purchased the property, sight unseen, basically from the concept. And they purchased it at the time. This was 2008. This was my first web series. And I was so excited because I was actually making like a real paycheck. I actually got to quit all of my side hustles and day jobs when I booked this job. So this was a pivotal moment because this was like my launching off point. The show was purchased at the time for $5 million, I believe, from CBS. And it was amazing to have network backing. And that was the actual point of the show. You hit it on the head, which is basically how do you make the stock market fun and interesting and engaging? And we had an incredible team of writers and producers, and the entire crew was just brilliant. And that was a major coup for me to be a part of that production. But it was super fun. We would do sketches. We would do, my favorite one is still on YouTube, actually. It's called OnStar. If you Google it, it's, I played different characters, and it was great because the writers and the producers really tapped into my theater background and let me show that. So we would create these sketches where I would play these outlandish characters, and it was kind of a variety show. It was like the Julie variety show. And it was just a really wonderful, wonderful time.
Well, that's awesome. I'm gonna have to find that. I'm gonna have to find that YouTube clip. I'm gonna have to search it up and find it.
Check it out. I think it's OnStar. It was a company they're still around. They are a freight moving company. It's like Uber, but for freight. So they just ship things. But like they're independent. So like you could be an independent person and just have a bunch of like mittens that you knitted for your Etsy store, and they would ship it for you, and you could just get like a one-off. So that was the stock. And it's a funny video. So I encourage anyone to go and watch. You'll get a laugh.
Yes. So now let's get into the sports stuff here. The first team you got to cover was the Mets, which imagine for you was just so cool and so special. You did the Beer Money show, which is awesome. And obviously you're talking about how you come from like a family of Mets fans. So I just have to ask, when you got that job, and what was your feeling? Kind of what was your reaction? What was your family's reaction, I guess? And then just how special was it to you to be able to cover a team that, you had grown up, kind of being around?
Yeah, I think the first thing I did was I called my parents and they were so excited. And then the second thing I did was like go through old photos to find. I used to have a satin starter jacket that said Mets on the back that I wore when I was like 5 years old. And I'm like, I have to find the photo of this. I still have it. Because I, just in case anyone ever questions, like, are you really a Mets fan? I'm like, I have proof. But it was wonderful. It felt like a family. It felt very familiar again, because I knew the team, I knew the franchise, I was familiar with the history. So Beer Money came first. Beer Money, we shot the pilot in 2008. It aired at the end of 2008, I believe. And then while I was doing Wall Strip, we shot 17 episodes in 14 days, and then they aired that season throughout. Rain delays, and it was just kind of filler programming, but it also had its own air date and actually got nominated for an Emmy, which is hilarious. And then the guys at SNY came back to me and said, would you like to host the magazine show, Mets Weekly, interviewing players and coaches and doing lifestyle pieces? And I was just so excited. I was just like, this is a dream job. And so that was really the beginning, the foundation that paved the way for my entire sports career. So I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful to the people over at SNY for giving me a chance and for casting me, because it was just a wonderful way to get my feet wet in the sports world.
Yeah, and then what, like at that time, who were some of your favorite, Mets players to interact with and stuff at that time?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Keith Hernandez is just an enigma wrapped in an onion, or whatever that quote is. He's so funny, and he's not even trying. He's just such an interesting character, and he's just so brutally honest. I think that's what people love about him. But he's just hilarious. He has great timing. Ron Darling is the kindest person and the most generous interview I think I ever did. He's just such a wonderful presence and knows so much about the game and so much about a pitcher's mentality. He's just an incredible baseball mind. And even Gary Cohen, I want to add him to that list, because to me, when it comes to broadcasters, he's the best. There's no one doing what he does at that level. I mean, I would put Vin Scully up there, rest his soul. But for those doing it at the moment, I think Gary Cohen is just the pinnacle of professionalism and just knows how to weave a story into a ball game. Howard Johnson was, I believe, the hitting coach that year, 2009, Hojo. He was hilarious. I'm trying to think of who else was part of that team. Wally Backman was over at the Cyclones. I interviewed him. He was a curmudgeon-y guy. Yeah, it was just a fun time. It was the first year at Citi Field, so there was a buzz around the team. Unfortunately, that was a really difficult year for Mets fans. That particular team, Jose Reyes, David Wright, some of the big names, was just plagued by injury. So I think at any given moment there was like 5 guys on the IL. It was pretty difficult. They had a tough go that year, but it still brought a really fun energy to Queens. That, it was sad to say goodbye to Shea. We shot a few episodes of Beer Money at Shea Stadium. I remember, I don't think I ever went there as a child. I was a little too young, but going there as an adult, I was like, all right, yeah, we gotta fix this place up. So I know it holds a lot of memories for people, but Citi Field was really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, when you were doing the Beer Money show, you're asking like fans like the trivia questions and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Are there any particular interactions with fans during that show that stick out to you today?
Gosh, I don't know if I should share this. Okay, I'll share it. I won't name names. There. So I did an interview with this guy. And I ended up meeting him many years later out, and he asked me out. And it wasn't until like our third or fourth date where he's like, you interviewed me. And I'm like, huh? And he's like, yeah, you interviewed me. I was on Beer Money. And I was like, no way. And I asked my friend to go back to he named the exact location, the date. So I went back to one of my buddies who worked at IMG, which was the production company. And he found the episode and found me the clip, and I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh. So that was pretty funny. And then also the other memory I had as far as interviews, my dad and my uncle were at a game and we were filming, and I asked them if they wanted to be part of the show. And I asked the production company, I'm like, is this a conflict of interest? Like if it's a family member? And they're like, no, as long as you don't give them the answers, which I did not. But my dad's a huge baseball fan, Brooklyn Dodger fan, and then later a Mets fan. And he got all the questions right, of course. So that was a really memorable interview, of course.
Wow, that's so awesome. Gosh, that first story is just crazy. Like what are the odds of that
What are the
happening?
odds? I know. Obviously, it didn't work out, but it was like the funniest date story because I was like, oh my gosh, I did not remember at all. But the guy was like, no, 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 no. Had the date, had the location, and it was pretty easy for the editor to find. So
Now you were, with the Mets from I believe it was like 08, 2010. Then you went to MTV, which is super cool. Very huge, and you got to interview some really big name celebrities, which is so awesome. So I have to ask, how did the MTV stuff come about?
well, the MTV stuff was a 9-month casting process. They were searching for a duo, a guy and a girl, to host their sort of latest iteration of TRL. TRL was hosted by so many different people after Carson Daly left, and like it, turned into so many different variations. So the latest one they did, it was 2010. And unfortunately, it was right at the time when Apple Music and at the time, Perez Hilton was posting video debuts. So, say Britney Spears or Bruno Mars or Lady Gaga came out and dropped a music video, people could then access it online right when it dropped. They didn't have to wait around for 5 p.m. when they would run home from school, like I did in high school and in middle school, because we would have to wait until the debut of these music videos, which MTV kind of had the monopoly on. They were the gatekeepers when it came to when an artist was going to release a music video. And now it was accessible to everyone. So it was difficult to get people to tune in for a video release when they had already watched it at 8 a.m. online. So that was kind of what was going on technology wise. And it definitely affected the ratings. But it was a wonderful gig. It was, again, live TV, live at 5. It was my first major network, cable network, live show. So it was definitely a learning process. The names we got to interview, though, I mean, everyone from Rihanna to Justin Timberlake to Jesse Eisman and gosh, Lady Gaga, Britney Spears. Yeah, I mean, it was a new celebrity every day. Justin Bieber. It was something new every day, which definitely kept my attention. So it was a good experience. And the clothes were amazing and the kids were amazing. And it was like almost surreal because I had grown up watching this show. And here I was at 1515 Broadway, like looking out that second story window at Times Square. And there were kids with signs with my name on it. And it was just like, it was crazy. It was surreal. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, yes, absolutely. And then kind of another thing that I thought was so cool is you got to go to a E3, like the video game convention and stuff, or and I think you were like reporting for Xbox, which I love because I
Yeah.
remember playing my Xbox 360 like freaking every day, back in the day. I thought it was cool because I think you were at E3 and you got to interview people like Steven Spielberg and stuff, and I was like, holy cow,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that was crazy. So one part of I kind of skipped over this, but technically, my first sideline job was actually not in baseball. It was in gaming. And that was with MLG, Major League Gaming. I started with them in around the same time. 2008 to 2011 was a very busy time for me. I was doing like 6 different hosting jobs. But MLG, they auditioned me and I ended up landing the gig. I had never been a sideline reporter before. And I kind of had to learn by doing. But I was interviewing on the pro circuit of professional video game players. And the games that we were commentating on was at the time, it started with Halo 3. Then we went to Halo Reach, Halo Anniversary, and Call of Duty, Blops. And yeah, so it sort of shifted. But that I sort of put my, flag in the ground when it came to sideline reporting on the MLG circuit. And so the Xbox job covering E3 was born of that. They had seen me, covering MLG, and they said, would you come and, be our sort of man on the street, boots on the ground, covering E3 for Xbox. And so I saw Steven Spielberg, he was there for the launch of one of the Star Wars video games. And I saw him and I sprinted with the mic and I told the camera guy, I said, just follow me. I said, I got to get this interview. And my producer, I don't even know if he knew where I had gone. He like turned around, I was gone. And I ran, I flagged him down and I just put the mic in his face. And to this day, I believe that might be my most favorite get that was not scheduled and unplanned, because it was one of those, again, spur of the moment, act on your feet, be ready for anything. It's live TV, just do it. And when you have that attitude, it's like you are unstoppable. And that's how I felt. And so I thought, there's nothing stopping me from getting Steven Spielberg. He's not surrounded by handlers. He doesn't have any other obligations. He's literally just walking the halls of E3. And so, yeah, I got the interview.
Gosh, well, that is a great story, and you know what? That's the mark of a great and ambitious journalist. You see just one of the greatest directors of all time just walking around. I mean, you got to go get that interview. So and you went ahead, you got it.
Yep, I got it. I mean, that was that. And I got a photo. I got a still photo. I never asked to take photos with celebrities or athletes. But I took a still photo, and it's definitely one of my favorite photos in my collection.
Yeah, absolutely. So now let's get to your time with the Nationals and stuff. And so kind of you made a return to baseball. So kind of what was that like? Kind of going back to baseball after kind of a couple years away, going with the Nationals.
Yeah. So the time in between, so timeline wise, for anyone who's following, so MTV ended. I ended up covering the Big Ten Network on a show called Tailgate 48, where we went to different Big Ten schools. And from there, I jumped on to college football on Fox, sideline for the A package with Gus Johnson, Charles Davis, that fall in 2012. And right after that, I believe it was in March, I got a call from the Nationals and they asked me to come to Baltimore, where the headquarters of MASN, Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, is. And they broadcast all the O's and Nationals games. And so I met with the guys at MASN and they pretty much hired me on the spot, but they had already done spring training. So I ended up kind of being a late hire. They hadn't really figured out if they wanted a sideline reporter or not. And then it took me a couple of weeks to basically pack up my life in New York and relocate. And that's something that I don't know the general public, truly understands about the life of a sideline reporter or really any broadcaster, is that sort of immediacy and ability to pack up and go and just be able to put your life into boxes and ship it down and then get a short-term rental in whatever city you're going to be in or whatever team you're covering, and being able to be so mobile. So I was lucky in that I had nothing holding me back. In 2013, I was able to just pick up and go. And I started the gig with the Washington Nationals. To this day, I would say it was the best franchise I had ever worked for as far as working environment and relationship building. I loved working for the Lerner family. Mark Lerner was the most gracious and incredibly generous, kind boss I had ever had, who made me feel so welcome. And it was just everybody in the DC area. I know they sometimes, get a lot of flack for being kind of a new team or transient fans, bandwagon fans, but I had a wonderful time in the district. I still, to this day, it was such a magical time because I think something about the relationship with the team, the Gatorade dumps. I mean, that that was like a whole theatrical moment onto its own. And it was just, it was really wonderful. I have so many fond memories of that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned the Gatorade showers because when those happen, like those clips went kind of viral, I know, on the internet and stuff. So, I got to ask, whenever, you're doing this interview and then you have all this Gatorade, just splashed on you, how are you able to kind of keep your composure, in that moment and stuff and just kind of keep things rolling?
Live theater, man. Like I said in the beginning, anything can happen. You got to be prepared and you got to keep your focus. I was told when I was hired that this was their shtick, this was their thing, and no, the network would not pay for my dry cleaning. And I had to be okay with that. And I said, absolutely. As an actor, when I saw the reaction that the crowd gave after that first Gatorade shower, and if you watch the clip, you can hear, I'm trying to think of his name. He's a bullpen guy. But he said, "Welcome, Julie," and it was kind of their welcoming Gatorade shower, sort of a initiation to to the group. But when I saw just how theatrical that moment was and how it played to the crowd, I went back to the guys and I said, "Look, I know that this gets a huge reaction, so let's do it. But here are my boundaries. No Gatorade showers on a getaway day because I did not want to sit on the plane with drenched clothes. There was nowhere for me to shower, and that Gatorade is very sticky. I said, please don't Gatorade dump on me when I'm wearing anything white. I do not want to have stains on my clothes." And then I had a shoe clause in there and they said, okay. And sure enough, they did respect it. They did respect. Oh, and I think leather wasn't, if I was wearing a leather jacket, I said, please don't get me. But everything else was fine. But it was such a wonderful moment. It got such a great reaction that, my theater kid background was like, oh my gosh, we have to keep this going. We have to do this. And at the time, the Washington Nationals were really, I think, Nationals and perhaps the Red Sox were really the first two teams that made it a shtick, that made it their thing to get the sideline reporter or on-field reporter and to really dump on them. And then everybody started doing it and it was a little more commonplace and, it became famous. And the sideline reporters became just as famous for getting dumped on as whatever player, that was the MVP of the game. So it was a lot of fun.
Yes, for sure. Now I want to bring up something that I'm not sure is true or not but I did see it on the internet, so I have to ask you about this. A famous Nationals fan is Maury Povich. He's a pretty famous Nats fan. So, and I saw this thing on the internet, and it said that you were apparently a guest host for his show at one time. So I have to ask, is that true?
Yes, it is true. Where did you find this? I didn't even know that still existed. That is hilarious. Come to think of it, I wonder if there's video of that out there because I would actually like to watch it. That was very early on in my career. They were looking for guest hosts because he was taking some time off. They needed some fill-in hosts for him because he was missing a few shows. And so they auditioned different New York, tri-state area TV personalities to come in and host the show while he wasn't there. I mean, every host kind of does this now. Ellen did it for a while, had guest hosts. I did this for Wendy Williams. I was a correspondent for the Wendy Williams show numerous times. But yes, I was a guest host on the Maury Povich show. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do any of the paternity tests because they saved that just for him. But gosh, talk about a bucket list. I wish that I could do a paternity test show. Because that was totally when I was like sick as like a teenager and at home during the day, that would be my guilty pleasure. I would absolutely watch those shows. You are not the father. Big fan. So yes, it is true. I did host the Maury Povich show one day.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, that's something pretty cool to have on your resume.
I honestly don't even know if it's still on my resume. It was so long ago. Maybe I should put it back. Should I put it back on there?
Yeah, I would say so.
I don't even know. Is that show still around? I don't even know if he's still doing the show.
Yeah. I like to think that he's still doing it. No, I think I still see it on and like, still like on in a like syndication, I guess. So,
Daytime TV. Gotta love it.
yep, absolutely. So after the Nats, you found yourself in beautiful San Diego, covering the Padres. And what's so cool about this is you got to work with one of the all-time great sports broadcasters, the late great Dick Enberg. So I have to ask, what was it like getting to work, with a legend like himself?
He was incredible. It was my first year with the Padres. It was his last year. So he was doing about 70% of the games. And then Don Orsillo, who had just come over from the Boston Red Sox from Nesson, he was just starting as well. So it was his first year too. And I got the pleasure of working side by side with Dick Enberg and being on the road with him. And really just, I observed a lot from him. I really just kind of wanted to watch him work because he was such a pro and he just had such an incredible vast knowledge of the game and of broadcasting and of voiceover and how to use your voice. So we would talk about sort of voice technique and voiceover and storytelling. And he was just a wonderful, wonderful mentor to me. I'm very, very grateful to have met and worked with him.
Yes, for sure. And something that I think is so cool is that you were kind of able to give him like this this on-air tribute to him, which I thought was really sweet. It's up on YouTube, and if you haven't watched it, you should because it's really sweet and touching. I thought you did a marvelous job with that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was part of one of his farewell shows. And the interesting thing about that, I thought about writing something out and I thought, but again, playing to the live theater, I said, I'm just going to leave it. And also because I'm a procrastinator and I sometimes like to leave things to be in the moment because they can be more real. And I just feel that they're more connected, or at least I'm more connected to it because it's truly coming from my heart. So I did not script that. I didn't write anything out. I wasn't reading anything. My producer in my ear just said, okay, when we come out of break, we're going to come to you and you can give your farewell thank you to Dick Enberg. And I said, okay, when the camera goes on and I see that red record light, I'm just going to go and see what comes out because it was from the heart. It was all real. It was all in the moment. And also knowing that he was in the booth at the time so he could hear all of it, I thought was really special because so many times people say those things after someone has passed on and they're not around anymore to hear it. And so to be able to tell him how we all felt about him while he was still here, I think was really special.
Yes, I would 100% agree. And I think it really is just a great moment. And I think you just did yeah. And I love it. And you spoke from the heart. I think that's what makes it great. It was very, authentic and stuff.
Thank you.
Of course. Now we've been talking a lot about your baseball, stuff, covering a lot of baseball. But as you mentioned earlier, you did sideline reporting for Fox Sports college football games, and one of those games that you covered was a game that I still have super vivid memories of watching. The 2013 Cotton Bowl, Texas A&M defeats Oklahoma, with Johnny Football leading the Aggies to victory. So I got to ask, what memories do you have from covering that game? And what was it like getting to interview Money Manziel?
Oh my gosh. I don't remember there ever being such fanfare around a college athlete. At least none that I had experienced up close. So being there at A&M, because when you're doing sideline for college football, you fly in on a Thursday, you have coaches meetings on Friday, and then you have the game on Saturday, and then you usually fly out either Saturday night, depending on the time of the game, or Sunday morning. And we got there early for Cotton Bowl because there was so much more to do. You know, it was a bigger game. So I think we flew in on a Tuesday, and we had that whole week leading up to the game to really get a feel for the atmosphere and talk to all the personnel. And there was a whole event with boosters and stuff, that obligations that we had to do as the broadcast team. He was, you know, I know people have their varying opinions about him now. Knowing what we know, sometimes it's difficult when we see an athlete or an actor and we have this idea of who they are in our minds, and then we get to know who they are either from a police blotter or gossip in the trades. And sometimes it's rather unsavory and it shades our view, as it should. But for all intents and purposes, when he was at A&M, he was absolutely incredible. He was incredible. He was an incredible person. To me, it was like, what I thought was so interesting was that he was really able to handle it all. That is a lot of attention, a lot of pressure on a young kid. And he was so young, and he was able to juggle all of the cameras, all of the fanfare that surrounded him in that moment, and also be able to perform when the bright lights were on him. And I know how difficult that is even for a professional athlete, but bring that to the college level and it's even more so. And he really was able to bring it when it needed to be brought. So that was a really interesting moment. I felt like I was watching a star in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. It's honestly crazy. Like just looking back, all the hype surrounding him, like just how massive he was. And I mean, we still get like big college stars. Today, of course, the first person you think of right now is like Caleb Williams and stuff at USC. But I mean, back then, like Johnny Football was just everywhere. It was pretty crazy.
It was crazy. I mean, I would say the only person I could compare it to was probably having done in 2009, I did the Heisman Tour, and we did the Florida Georgia game, which was the SEC National Championship, which was Tim Tebow's last game, I believe, at Florida. And the fanfare and all of the pomp and circumstance surrounding Tim Tebow in 2009 was a lot, but nothing, at least to what I experienced as a broadcaster, having just come in. I mean, again, I was not familiar with the programs before actually covering them as far as the day-to-day was concerned. So I don't know what it was like to go to Florida during that time. But I know that the Johnny, like you said, the Johnny football phenomenon was unlike anything. Could you imagine if the name and likeness era was
Oh
around?
boy.
I
Oh,
mean, that I think about that sometimes, like some of the guys that I covered, like what if they had the ability to capitalize on all of that in the way that today's athletes do? It just kind of blows your mind.
like I said, I remember watching that game, and I, obviously, I was watching the game for Manziel. I was watching it because he's going up against, of course, a powerhouse in OU, and Bob Stoops was still the coach at that time. But when I remember watching that game and thinking, wow, this sideline reporter is awesome.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
when, yeah. That's it. Yeah, I'm telling you, what my most vivid memories, that game is watching you do the reporting, doing the interviews and stuff, and just being super impressed, like with your on camera presence, your, delivery and everything. So that stuff, it left an impression on me. It really did.
Oh, thank you. That's like the kindest thing. Thank you so much. That I did my job then.
Yes, you certainly did. Now, actually, I want to talk about the business that you and your husband run. Hume Supernatural is the company you and your husband, you guys founded it. All natural deodorant. So I have to ask, how did you guys kind of come up with the idea for this? And what's it been like seeing the growth of the company?
Yeah, it was something that I had always wanted to start a business. I had been really into using natural products, I guess, before they were cool. So I started using like natural deodorant back in high school, but I couldn't ever find anything that truly smelled amazing and actually worked. I was so frustrated with the product. I had tried everything out there on the market and nothing really worked well. And being an on camera personality, you can't have pit stains and be sweating into clothes, especially if you have a stylist and you're just borrowing the costumes or the outfits. You have to give those back, and you can't give them back with white pit stains or like white marks on the clothes. So I was looking for something that not only worked, but something that I could wear on camera for when I had to do those interviews, that I was under the bright lights and it was hot and sweaty, or you're at spring training and you're doing a game in Arizona at high noon. So I really wanted something to make something that worked. So we worked with a chemist to use the latest technology as far as working with your body's natural microbiome. What sets us apart from other natural deodorants out there, they use fillers that are pretty cheap and cause hyper drying to the skin, like arrowroot powder or baking soda. Those also leave the white marks. That's why you get those white marks on your shirts. So we use a lactobacillus ferment to balance out the bacteria, the good and bad bacteria underneath your armpit. So your armpit is your body's second largest microbiome, second to your gut, which has a flourish of good and bad bacteria. And the same way you would balance that out using a pre or probiotic to balance the good and bad bacteria in your gut, we use that same philosophy for your armpit. And we also use diatomaceous earth to promote dryness so that you're not sweating and you're not ruining those clothes that you may have to give back, or that you may be in front of hundreds of people giving a speech or on the sidelines. And so we launched it in 2020. We did R&D 2018 for 2 years, and we launched it right before the pandemic and quickly had to pivot because all of the gyms shut down, all of the yoga studios, all of the bar classes shut down. And so we went online. And so we have a website, humesupernatural.com. Now, fast forward, we are in 4,500 doors nationwide. We're in Whole Foods, we're in Sprouts, Publix in Florida, HEB in Texas. We're in Thrive Market, Metropolitan Market, Hy-Vee. What else? Fresh Time in the Midwest. And we paired really wonderful scents that are sophisticated and don't just smell like lavender and rose or fresh cotton blossom. Our scents smell like a really super expensive cologne or perfume.
Well, that is awesome. That's really great to hear about, like how much the company has grown, and how you can find it in so many different places. And that's really really awesome to hear about and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. And we're on Amazon as well. So we have a body oil as well for dry skin. And we just launched an all over body deodorant that you can literally use anywhere. And it's also acts as an anti-chafe balm. So in those hot summer workouts, you can put it literally anywhere. And that's available now. So we just launched that a week ago. That's brand new.
Oh, wow, that's great. That is great. And just overall, I think it's great, what you and your husband are doing with this stuff. Like I said, I look at the back of these things, a lot. And then, I'm just like, ooh, this, should I really be putting this on myself? And it's just like, yeah, it's not good. And some of the stuff, you don't know what some of these ingredients can lead to. And that's kind of
Yeah.
don't know, that's the scary stuff, is you don't know what can happen after.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, your skin is your body's largest organ. Everything you put on your skin goes directly into your bloodstream. And in the case of your armpits, it goes into your lymphatic system because your lymph nodes are right there. And we have no aluminum. So there's no, links to cancer, Alzheimer's, which they have found with aluminum. And, if you flip over a canister of antiperspirant, it has aluminum, and it will say drug facts because aluminum is considered a drug by the FDA. So we don't have any of that bad stuff, only the good stuff. And yes, I would love for you to try it. And for anyone who's interested, like I said, you can find it in Whole Foods. It'll be in Whole Foods nationally. We're in the West Coast right now, but Whole Foods national distribution in April. And we're currently in all Sprouts, Publix, and HEB and all over really. But you can find us on Amazon, also humesupernatural.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. My last question here is I'm just very curious about this. What, in your opinion, are the primary keys to living a healthy lifestyle?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. I think having an emotionally, mentally, and physically healthy lifestyle are all intertwined. And I think attention must be paid to all three. I think living your most authentic self is incredibly important to living a healthy lifestyle. Drinking water, which I need to do more. It's actually on my resolutions list, is to drink more water. Touching some grass, getting outside. And also, I think what we call in theater, taking a risk or risking. I think that's really important, which is to say, getting out of your comfort zone. If there's something you've always wanted to do, we have the ability now more than ever. We all have this. And if there's something that you've been wanting to try, or maybe one day I want to be a sideline reporter, or I want to be an actor, I want to be a performer, I just don't know how to get started. You start here and you take a risk and you put it out there. I think it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there. It takes a lot of courage to put your art and your creations out there, your content out there. But you learn by doing, you get better by doing, and you get better by risking, and you become a more fully formed human, I think, the more you put yourself out there. And I think it creates a confidence that you really can't replicate unless you actually do it. You can't fake that. So I think having a secure sense of self and having that healthy confidence, and then also the peace of mind to know your limits and to know when to say no and to know your boundaries, I think that's all integral to living a healthier lifestyle.
Well, that is some amazing advice, Julie. And gosh, thank you so much for letting me have the opportunity to speak with you today. It was truly, truly an honor.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. It's so nice to meet you. And thank you so much for, first of all, for doing all the research. You really did your research. Like, you pulled up some things, that Maury Povich reference. I think this is the first interview I've ever done where someone's brought that up. So I kind of forgot about that. So memory unlocked. Thank you. And thank you for doing all of that research and doing your due diligence as a journalist yourself, because I appreciate that so much. And thank you for having me.